In a small village, there lived a boy named Rohan. He was bright but terribly lazy. He always delayed important tasks, ignored responsibilities, and wasted his time on meaningless distractions. Because of this, he fell behind in his studies and life. His parents and teachers often warned him, "Time is precious. If you don't use it wisely, you'll regret it one day." But Rohan never listened. One day, a wise old man visited the village. He was famous for his knowledge, and people from distant places came to seek his guidance. Curious, Rohan also went to meet him, not to change himself, but to find an easy shortcut to success. When his turn came, he asked, "Sir, I feel like a failure. My friends are ahead of me in everything. I want to be the best. Please tell me a way to succeed." The wise man smiled kindly and said, "My child, your problem is not luck or talent, it is time. You waste it without realizing its value. Let me tell you a story. Once, in a prosperous kingdom, there was a kind and generous king. One day he met an old childhood friend who had once been full of dreams but was now poor, unemployed, and bitter. "My fate has been cruel," the friend complained. "Whenever I try something, I fail. People say I am lazy, but I just don't get the right chances." The king listened carefully and then made a life-changing offer. "Before sunset, you may take as much gold and jewels from my royal treasury as you can carry." The man was overjoyed. He rushed home to tell his wife. "This is amazing," his wife exclaimed. "Go quickly and collect the gold." But the man shrugged. "I haven't eaten all day. Let me eat first." His wife quickly prepared a meal. He ate slowly, enjoying every bite, thinking, "There's plenty of time." After eating, he felt sleepy. "I'll rest for a while and then go." He laid down for a short nap, but slept for 2 hours. When he woke up, it was afternoon. He picked up some sacks and finally left for the palace. But the sun was blazing, and he felt exhausted. "It's too hot. I'll rest under this tree for a while," he thought. The cool breeze lulled him into another deep sleep. He woke up to the horror of the setting sun. Panicked, he ran towards the palace, but it was too late. The palace gates had already closed. He stood outside, heartbroken and full of regret. The gold, the treasure, the opportunity, everything was lost because he had wasted his time. The wise man finished the story and looked at Rohan. He saw realization in the boy's eyes. "I was just like that man," Rohan whispered. "Always delaying, always thinking there's time left." The wise man nodded. "Every moment you waste is an opportunity lost forever. Time is like gold. Use it wisely, or you will regret it later." From that day on, Rohan changed. He stopped procrastinating and started working hard. Slowly, he caught up with his friends, earned respect, and felt happier than ever before. Moral of the story: time is the most precious gift. If you waste it, you lose opportunities that may never come again.
In a bustling village surrounded by lush green hills, there lived a young boy named Arjun. Arjun was known for his curiosity and eagerness to achieve great things, but he often grew frustrated when things didn't happen quickly. One day, he heard about a wise old gardener named Guruji who lived at the edge of the village. Guruji was said to possess the secret to growing the most beautiful flowers in the world. Eager to learn, Arjun rushed to Guruji's cottage. "Guruji, please teach me how to grow the most beautiful flowers," he pleaded. Guruji smiled and handed Arjun a single seed. "Plant this seed, water it every day, and wait patiently. But remember, you must not dig it up to check its progress. Trust the process." Arjun was excited. He planted the seed in his garden and watered it diligently. Days turned into weeks, but nothing seemed to happen. Frustration crept in. Why isn't it growing? Did I do something wrong? He wondered. One morning, unable to resist, Arjun dug up the seed to see if it had sprouted. To his dismay, he found the seed unchanged. Disheartened, he returned to Guruji. The seed didn't grow. I followed your instructions, but nothing happened. Guruji sighed gently. Arjun, you lacked patience. The seed was on the verge of sprouting, but by digging it up, you disrupted its growth. Patience is the key to nurturing life. Without it, even the most promising beginnings can be undone. Arjun felt a pang of regret. Guruji handed him another seed. Try again, but this time trust the process and let time work its magic. Arjun planted the second seed and watered it daily. This time, he resisted the urge to dig it up. Weeks passed, and one morning, he saw a tiny green shoot breaking through the soil. Over time, it grew into a magnificent flower, more beautiful than anything Arjun had ever seen. From that day on, Arjun learned the value of patience. He realized that great things take time. And true growth happens when we trust the process and remain steadfast in our efforts.
Once upon a time, in a deep green jungle, there lived a mighty lion. He was strong and fierce, known as the king of the jungle. One hot summer day, the lion felt very thirsty. He walked for miles until he found a small pond with clear, cool water. Just as the lion bent down to drink, a large boar arrived. The boar was big and powerful, with strong tusks. He was also very thirsty. "Step aside," the boar grunted. "I will drink first," the lion roared in anger. "I am the king of the jungle. I will drink first." And so they began to argue. The argument turned into a fierce fight. The lion swiped his sharp claws and the boar charged with his tusks. They fought fiercely, kicking up dust, roaring and grunting, neither willing to back down. But just as they were about to strike again, they heard a strange noise from above. High up in the trees, a flock of vultures sat watching. Their sharp eyes glowed with hunger. The lion and the boar stopped fighting and looked up. The vultures were waiting for one of them to fall so they could feast on the loser. Realizing their mistake, the lion and the boar stepped back. They had been so busy fighting each other that they had almost made themselves easy prey. The lion took a deep breath. "Friend, why are we fighting?" he said. "If we continue, the vultures will eat us both." The boar nodded. "You are right. Let us stop fighting and share the water." And so, the lion and the boar drank peacefully and went their separate ways. Moral of the story: fighting over small things can make us weak, while enemies wait to take advantage of our foolishness. It is better to live in peace than to destroy each other.
Once upon a time, there lived a poor farmer in a small village. He worked hard every day, but he was barely able to make enough money to feed his family. One morning, while walking through the forest, the farmer found a beautiful golden feathered goose trapped in some bushes. Feeling pity for the goose, the farmer carefully freed it. To his surprise, the goose spoke. "Thank you for saving me. I want to help you in return. Take me home, and I will lay a golden egg for you every day." The farmer was amazed. He took the goose home and waited. The next morning, the goose laid a shiny golden egg. The farmer sold the egg in the market and got a lot of money. Day after day, the goose laid a golden egg, and the farmer became richer and richer. His family no longer had to worry about food or money. However, as time passed, the farmer grew greedy. One day, he thought, "Why should I wait for one egg every day? There must be many golden eggs inside the goose. If I cut it open, I can take them all at once and become the richest man in the world." Ignoring the goose's loyalty, the farmer grabbed a knife and killed it. But when he cut the goose open, he found nothing inside. No golden eggs, just an ordinary goose. The farmer realized his mistake too late. The magic goose was gone forever, and with it, his chance to become wealthy. He returned to his poor life, full of regret. Moral of the story: greed leads to loss. Be content with what you have.
In a peaceful little village, a hard-working farmer owned a donkey that had served him faithfully for many years. Once strong and diligent, the donkey had now grown old and weak, no longer able to carry heavy loads or plow the fields as he once did. Seeing this, the farmer allowed the donkey to spend his days grazing in the fields, living out his last years in peace. One warm afternoon, as the donkey wandered near an old well, his footing slipped, and with a startled bray, he tumbled down into the deep, dark pit. He landed with a heavy thud, and panic surged through him. He tried to climb, but the walls were too steep. Trapped and frightened, he let out desperate cries, hoping someone would hear him. Hours later, a villager passing by heard the donkey's sorrowful brays. Curious, he followed the sound and peered into the well. His eyes widened in shock. Without wasting a second, he sprinted to the farmer's house and told him what had happened. Alarmed, the farmer rushed to the well, bringing along his neighbors to help. When they arrived, they found the donkey looking up at them with pleading eyes, his body trembling with fear. The villagers tried every possible way to pull him out. Ropes, wooden planks, even forming a human chain. But nothing worked. As the day wore on, exhaustion and frustration set in. The farmer sighed heavily, his heart heavy with regret. "He's too old," he murmured. "Even if we manage to pull him out, he won't be of much use. It's best to put him out of his misery." His words struck the villagers with sorrow, but reluctantly they agreed. The farmer decided to fill the well with dirt, thinking it would be a merciful end. With heavy hearts, the villagers picked up shovels and began throwing soil into the well. At first, the donkey panicked. He felt the dirt raining down on him, covering his back, and he brayed in despair. But then, something remarkable happened. A thought sparked in his mind. What if, instead of letting this bury me, I use it to rise? Summoning his strength, he shook off the dirt and stepped on top of it. More dirt came down, but each time he shook it off and climbed higher. Step by step, he lifted himself. Above, the villagers noticed something strange. The donkey's cries had stopped. Curious, the farmer peered into the well and gasped. Instead of sinking under the dirt, the donkey was rising. With each shovel of soil, he climbed higher and higher. The villagers, now in awe, shoveled faster. The donkey, determined and unwavering, kept going. And then, after what seemed like an eternity, he reached the top. With one final leap, he sprang out of the well, landing gracefully on solid ground. The farmer and the villagers stood in stunned silence. The donkey, once trembling in fear, now stood tall, his eyes filled with quiet triumph. Without a second glance, he trotted off into the open fields, a survivor who had freed himself when no one else believed he could. The farmer watched him go, realization dawning upon him. He had underestimated the donkey's will to live, his inner strength, and his worth. Moral of the story: life will throw challenges at us, sometimes burying us under hardships. But instead of letting difficulties defeat us, we must learn to shake them off and rise above them. Like the donkey, we can turn every obstacle into a stepping stone. This story also teaches us about self-worth. Just because someone deems us useless or incapable does not mean they are right. Our strength lies within us, and through perseverance, we can prove our true value. So when life tries to bury you, remember, shake it off, step up, and keep going.
Once upon a time, in a lush green forest, a lamb was grazing near a stream. The water was cool and fresh, and the lamb enjoyed drinking from it while nibbling on the grass nearby. As the lamb drank from the stream, a hungry wolf spotted him from behind a bush. The wolf's stomach growled, and he thought, "That lamb looks delicious. I must find a way to eat him." The wolf, being sly, decided to create an excuse to attack the lamb. He walked up to the stream and growled, "Hey, how dare you make the water muddy while I'm drinking from it?" The lamb, trembling with fear but politely replied, "Sir, I cannot make the water muddy for you. You are standing upstream and I am downstream. The water flows from you to me." The wolf frowned, realizing his first excuse didn't work. He quickly came up with another. "Well, last year, you insulted me." The lamb looked confused and said, "But sir, I wasn't even born last year. How could I insult you?" The wolf was annoyed that his excuses weren't working. He snarled, "If it wasn't you, it must have been your father or mother. Someone from your family has insulted me and you must pay for it." Before the lamb could say anything else, the wolf pounced on him and carried him away to eat. Moral of the story: those who want to do wrong will always find an excuse to do so, no matter how unreasonable it is.
In the heart of a vast, ancient forest, where the trees whispered secrets of time, a young man came running to a wise sage. His eyes were filled with tears, his voice shaking with despair. He fell to his knees, his body trembling. "Master," he sobbed, "I've lost everything. Thieves attacked me in the forest. They stole all my belongings, my only money, even my food. I have nothing left. How can life be so unfair?" The sage, sitting in peaceful silence, gazed at the young man with kind, knowing eyes. He gently placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Do not grieve, my child. Whatever has happened for a reason." The young man's sorrow turned to anger. "How can you say that? Losing everything is not a blessing. It is the worst thing that has ever happened to me." The sage smiled and said, "Let me tell you a story. Long ago, in a small village by the river, there lived a poor farmer with his wife and young son. Though they had little, they found happiness in their simple life. One year, a terrible flood swept through the village. The raging waters destroyed everything: homes, crops, even the farmer's small grain storage. Sitting on the ground, his head in his hands, the farmer wept. Everything is lost. How will we survive? But his young son, still full of hope, said, "Father, don't worry. Whatever happens, happens for a reason." The farmer's grief turned into fury. "How dare you say that? We have lost everything. There is no reason behind the suffering." In anger, the farmer pushed his son away. "Leave. I don't want to hear such foolishness." Heartbroken, the boy walked away, tears rolling down his cheeks. As night fell, regret filled the farmer's heart. What had he done? Suddenly, a rescue boat arrived, saving those left in the village. His wife, wiping her tears, said, "See, our son was right. Help came." But the farmer wasn't convinced. What good is being saved if we have nothing left? Days turned into weeks, and survival became harder. His wife then suggested, "Go to the city and find work. Maybe we can rebuild our lives." With a heavy heart, the farmer agreed. He walked for days, knocking on doors, but nobody offered him work. Just as he was about to give up, he met a kind merchant. "I need a hard-working man," the merchant said. "I will give you work and a place to stay." With no other choice, the farmer accepted. Years passed and he worked tirelessly. Then one evening there was a knock at his door. When he opened it, he froze in shock. Standing before him was his son, now a grown man, well-dressed and carrying a bag. "Father, it's me." The farmer's heart pounded. "My son, I thought I lost you." With a smile, the son said, "After you sent me away, I traveled to the city. I struggled at first, but then I found work. I learned business, and over time, I built my own company. I've come to take you and mother home." He opened the bag, revealing a deed to a new house. The farmer collapsed into his son's arms, weeping tears of joy. "You were right, my son. Everything does happen for a reason." The young man listened to the sage's story, his heart heavy with thought. But I still don't see how my suffering has a reason. The sage smiled and handed him a small stone. Take this, it may help you. The young man looked at the stone closely. His eyes widened in shock. It was a rare, valuable gemstone. Had you not been robbed, the sage said, you would have never wandered here, never met me, and you would have never received this. The young man fell to his knees, overwhelmed. His pain had led him to something greater. He left the forest, no longer sad, but filled with hope. Life is full of unexpected struggles. It may feel like everything is falling apart, but sometimes what seems like a setback is actually a path to something better. The greatest challenges often hide the biggest blessings. So whenever life feels unfair, trust the journey, because even in the darkest moments, everything happens for a reason.
Once upon a time, in a small village, there was a barber. He was greedy. All the villagers loved him because he was friendly, but they didn't know his secret. He was always trying to trick them out of more money. One day, a traveler came to the village. He needed a haircut, so he went to barber. The traveler sat down, and barber began to cut his hair. But barber was thinking, if I charge him a little extra, maybe I can make more money today. So, after finishing the haircut, barber said, "Oh, I see you need a shave too. It'll be just a small extra charge, and I'll give you the best shave of your life." The traveler agreed, and barber gave him a quick shave. Then, after that, barber said, "Your eyebrows also need trimming, just a small fee for that." The traveler, not knowing barber's tricks, agreed to pay. But barber wasn't done yet. He looked at the traveler's ears and said, "Your ears need cleaning too. It's an extra service I provide. Only a little more money for a clean and fresh look." The traveler started to get suspicious, but was too polite to argue. Finally, barber finished and told the traveler the total bill, which was much higher than it should have been. The traveler was shocked and decided he'd had enough of barber's tricks. He took out the money, but before handing it over, the traveler said, "You've done a lot of things to me today, so here's something for your trouble. This bag of gold coins." Barber's eyes grew wide with greed, and he quickly grabbed the bag without even checking it. The traveler then said, "But first I must explain something to you. That bag doesn't contain gold coins. It's full of feathers. Because you tried to trick me, the same way you trick everyone else, I filled this bag with something you can't use. Just like your tricks. You might have gotten rich for a moment, but your greed will only lead to trouble in the end." Barber stood there, realizing that greed only made him lose everything in the end. From that day, he decided to change his ways and never trick anyone again.
Once upon a time, in the depths of a vast forest, there stood an ancient tree with a massive hollow in its trunk. This tree was home to a blind vulture who had lost his sight with age. Unable to hunt or fend for himself, he relied on the kindness of the smaller birds that lived in the same tree. One day, as the vulture sat in his hollow, shivering from hunger, a group of sparrows, doves, and miners gathered around him. Seeing his misery, the kind-hearted birds made him an offer. "Old vulture, we will bring you food every day, but in return, you must guard our young ones from snakes and other predators." Grateful for their generosity, the vulture agreed. Though he was blind, his sharp ears and strong beak made him an excellent protector. As days passed, the birds kept their promise, bringing him scraps of food while he faithfully watched over their nests. However, as time went by, greed crept into the vulture's heart. "These birds trust me completely," he thought. "What if I take advantage of them?" One fateful evening, after finishing his meal, he got a whiff of something delicious. The scent of tender baby birds. His stomach growled and the temptation was unbearable. At first, he resisted, but one night, when no one was watching, he gave in to his greed and devoured a baby chick. At first, no one noticed, but as more chicks went missing, the birds grew suspicious. They watched closely and discovered the terrible truth. Their trusted guardian had turned into a murderer. Enraged, the birds held a meeting. "He betrayed our trust. He must be punished," one of the sparrows cried. Before the blind vulture could react, the furious flock attacked him from all sides, pecking, clawing, and tearing at his feathers. Weak and helpless, the vulture could not defend himself. With one final push, they threw him out of the tree. He fell hard to the ground, breaking his bones. Lying there, gasping for breath, the vulture realized his mistake. Had I remained content with what they gave me, I would have lived in peace. But my greed destroyed me, and thus the blind vulture met his tragic end, teaching an important lesson. Greed and betrayal lead to downfall. One must never betray those who trust us.